So let's talk a little bit about the future of cryptocurrencies now. We're joined on the line from Tokyo by Ken Nagami. Ken is head of Japan at Swissborg. Ken, pleasure to have you on the program. So what do you make of this assertion that if we do get much more in the way of regulation for the crypto space, that it's ultimately a good thing?
Yeah, so, we believe that regulation is good. In fact, good regulation is better. We at Swissborg, we want to be fully aligned with the authorities. In fact, we are based in Switzerland, which is the leader in crypto finance. And we're also operating here in Tokyo, which is seen as the leader in terms of regulation and legislation in crypto. I think in any kind of market, regulation is necessary for the healthy growth of the market. I think that the drop in recent markets, in stock markets and crypto assets, was kind of a necessary wake-up call for more intelligent and rational investing. I think also people were nervous about the regulatory authorities. We in crypto assets always react to every single whisper and murmur of coming out of Korea and China and Japan, and recently out of the U.S. with the SEC Senate hearings. But I think these are all good news.
But do you think that consumers are worried about the increased scrutiny and, I guess, regulation? Because we have, of course, seen quite a huge downturn in, say, the price of Bitcoin. Do you think this is scaring people off moving into cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so I think in any kind of market where we've seen a prolonged period of expansion in prices without any healthy correction regularly to remove things like, complacency and irrationality, you will ultimately see a big correction like we've seen in stock markets. And these moves are very painful for investors, unfortunately, and the buyers are usually not prepared for the drop in prices. They are not prepared for the evaporation of liquidity, and volatility spikes can wipe people out. That's the same in stocks, and it's exactly the same in crypto markets. But the difference is by nature of crypto assets. Crypto assets are more volatile. They're more speculative, so these moves can be more pronounced. But the mechanics are the same. I think the removal of fraudiness and the return to rationality and, in certain ways, intelligent investing is good for the long term.
You would think that in order for the cryptos to kind of gain wider adoption, that the volatility component be reduced a bit. One of the other things that's attractive about cryptos, obviously, is the notion of anonymity in trading. But if you were helping regulators write new rules, I mean, where would you begin? What do you think is the most important thing to get under control right now?
Well, I think some of the issues that, for example, that Korea are facing, and the reasons why they're at least in the media being portrayed as clamping down, is that they have no regulation in place at all. For example, they had anonymous trading, which is a huge problem. They have no tax regulation in place. And in fact, in most jurisdictions, the biggest problem is not having enough resources to manage this growing market. Japan is the same thing. We have resources, but clearly not enough. And so it leaves a huge space for illegal activity. I believe that's true. And especially the case for things like ICOs, which is a new funding mechanism. It's great for startups, but even in Japan, we don't have any clear regulation in place for those things, which leaves a space open for, scams and some Ponzi schemes, for example. So I think that you need an all-encompassing blanket regulation to control things. But I think it's very difficult to keep everything in check because it's such a very fast-moving and expanding market. Jurisdiction by jurisdiction, we need to have conversation. For the long-term growth of this market, we need to have conversation and dialogue with markets, dialogue with consumers, and most importantly, dialogue with regulators.
Ken, that is obviously one of the downsides, I should say, scams. But on the upsides, people are starting to use blockchain technology to really increase wealth management. We had a guest on last hour who was actually talking about how they're using blockchain technology for renting out a holiday accommodation, for example. So what are some of the interesting potential applications for use of blockchain?
Sure. So, blockchain is just a platform, and Bitcoin was the first real use application of it. But obviously, there are much wider practical implementations of it. As you know, Estonia is a country that is a very small country, but is implementing blockchain technology to replace all of its government services, and it's completely transparent to the users. We at Swissborg, actually, we are a crypto wealth management platform, and we use blockchain technology. So our vision is to make wealth management services accessible not only to high net worth people, but literally anybody and everybody that has access to a smartphone. If you look at the global distribution of wealth, something like 99% of the population owns less than $1 million. So these people had no access to wealth management services. But these people have 65% of the global wealth. So at Swissborg, we see huge opportunity in this segment where we can give these people accessibility to the services that never existed with the use of blockchain, with the use of things like smart contracts. So we literally created a company that never existed before.
Mm-hmm.